Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. Well, if you just watched our last video, you'll see that we've achieved a very significant milestone. Finally got the Ferguson to run, got the engine running. Obviously didn't run it for very long, we didn't have any cooling or anything connected at that time. But wow, just such a relief, such an amazing experience essentially. But in that video, I did talk a little bit, or very briefly, about the fact that I had obviously done a little bit more work in order to get to that stage, which I hadn't filmed, and I did promise that I would come back and just bring you up to date, essentially. So mostly that's what this video is going to be about. I'll quickly run through the few bits that I've done, things like the wiring, getting the distributor connected and all of that good stuff, the coil, all of that good stuff. But actually I've now also gone beyond that again. So as you can see, we've now got the exhaust fitted, we've also have the radiator connected, we've filled it with water. We haven't put the antifreeze in at this point because obviously everything still needs to come back off again, and I'll talk about that in a second. Connected the dynamo, a few other bits and pieces, basically just to make the engine a little bit more complete, but more importantly so that I could run it for a period of time. Make sure, well, primarily I'm looking for any leaks, oil leaks, water leaks primarily, fuel as well, but much less concerned about that. But also I wanted to get the engine running just right, as best I could in terms of the timing and in terms of the air-fuel mixture as well. And again, really just to make sure that everything is as I expected before, and this is the piece that we're coming on to next. The next phase of this project now will actually be, ironically, to remove a lot of the stuff that we've just put on. Anything that doesn't need to be painted will now have to come off, and we'll have to close up any openings, holes, orifices, whatever, and essentially prepare the tractor for painting, which is kind of the next big phase of the project. We need to wait for better weather to do painting. It's still very cold and also very damp here in the UK at the moment, and so I don't plan to be painting probably any time in the next 3 months, unfortunately. But there is a heck of a lot of preparation work that needs to be done. Like I say, I need to remove the bits that I don't want painted. There is a lot of body work to be done, preparing the bonnet, preparing the mud guards, etc. They all need filling. There's a small amount of rust repair that needs to be done on one of the mud guards. So I think the next phase of this project is going to be covering those aspects, essentially preparing everything for paint. So first the tractor and then all the different components that will inevitably be painted separately from the tractor. But one other thing, just another update, you will have watched, we've had a couple of videos on our Dynamo. The first video was we tested it and then dismantled it. Second video was all about rewrapping the coils, getting them back up to snuff essentially. I think the next video was us trying to reassemble the Dynamo and determining at that point that unfortunately it looks like I'd made the wrapping on the field coils much too thick, to the point that I can't actually get the Dynamo to go back together. What I've done, I've actually now purchased a reconditioned, well, it's essentially a new old stock Dynamo. It's arrived this week, it's still in this box. I haven't even opened the box yet. So probably in this video, hopefully, we'll also unpack that, maybe do a quick bench test on it, and just make sure that it's okay. Of course, you take a risk when you buy these things. You don't know whether they're actually running or not. And of course, it's from a private individual, so essentially no returns, I guess. But yeah, so I thought we'd quickly run through just these little bits. But most importantly, I wanted to just bring you up to date, primarily I think on the wiring, and just show you what we've done on that. But yeah, let's get into it. I'll stop gabbing, and I'm going to go handheld. It's going to be much easier to just hold the camera and show you what I'm talking about. the quality of the filming may not be 100%, then obviously it might be a bit shaky, etc. So please just bear with me. But I think it's important that we show, and we've always committed essentially to showing you everything that we do, and so I feel that this is important. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, and I think I did show this very briefly in the last video, we have done some wiring and a few bits and pieces. The most significant one, I guess, is these new battery cables. You can see we've got a positive here that runs essentially from the positive of the battery. Bear in mind, I am wiring this tractor as negative to earth, or negative to chassis, essentially. So the red positive, that runs to one side of the starter switch over there, and then you've got on the other side, you've got one that then runs all the way through to the starter, and you can see that there. Sorry, camera's going to focus on my hand instead. Now, I decided to replace these completely. These are silicon coated cables, obviously designed for this application, and I felt that I kind of enjoy making these sorts of things rather than just purchasing the pre-made ones. And I think most places do sell pre-made cables. So if you're not into that sort of thing, you can actually just purchase the pre-made cables if yours are not that great. Now, the other one then is obviously the earth cable, or rather negative cable. You can see that's just hanging here at the moment. I've connected that just there. Just come a bit closer. You can see I've put it there just on the switch, straight onto the chassis. Now, I think it maybe should go, for example, onto here. Yeah, here near the starter. But what I actually do have is another good earth strap, and what I plan to do is to put an earth strap from that bolt where the cable is, and I'll bring that across to here, and that will give us a really good solid earth, essentially. I decided to put it there because, well, I'll go over to the workbench in a minute and I'll show you, but the length of cable that I bought, it would have reached, but it wouldn't have been as tardy, and I wanted this to be a little bit tardier. Also, I kind of made the mistake, I suppose, of copying and basically measuring against the original cable, the length, and it turns out that it wouldn't have worked the way I want to route the battery cables when the battery basket is actually in, and so yeah, it's a bit of a change, but it's not the end of the world. Right, now the other thing here that you'll see is this wiring loom. You can see it kind of snaking all around here. This is a KMP brand product, and I will show you the model number, part number, and I'll also put it in the description of the video. It's a really good quality loom, and if you look online, look on their website, not only do you see a picture of the loom itself, but you'll also see the wiring diagram, which in fact there's two wiring diagrams, and they're actually really easy to follow. So I definitely recommend that. So at the moment, the only wires that we're using on that is basically the ignition switch wires, which are these two up here, and then you can see the white wire running through here, and that goes to the positive terminal on the coil. Now you do have to terminate these yourself, right? So the loom doesn't come with its own terminations. You do have to do those. The other thing, just while we're here, the distributor that I decided to purchase. Now you'll remember, again, if you go back in our videos, you'll know that the distributor that we had that came with this tractor turned out not to be the correct one. And so I did actually get from KMP brand Anglo Agri Parts their replacement distributor, and this is an electronic replacement distributor, so it doesn't have points and condenser in it. It actually is all electronic. And so what that means now is that you have a positive cable which goes to the positive terminal on the coil, and you also have a negative which goes to obviously the negative of the coil, and that is essentially how you wire that one up. Obviously we've installed the plugs, brand new plugs, and then obviously the plug cables and the coil cable. They came out of the pack that I got from Anglo Agri Parts KMP brand as well. and I will actually show you that. Again, that was actually shown in the previous video, but I will show you again in this one. And then the other thing that we've done since that last video, as you can see, we've installed the radiator, we've put the radiator hoses on, and indeed we've filled it with water. And then of course, coming around the other side, we connected the old dynamo. Now what I did with this dynamo is I basically took the field coils out and reassembled the dynamo without the field coils. And of course it won't work that way, but what it does allow me to do, or did allow me to do, obviously, is to connect the fan belt and basically get that up and running, which means that the fan now turns and also the water pump turns, so we would be pumping water. One thing to note on this tractor though, and I think this is actually very common with these Fergies, it doesn't seem to get up to temperature. And what I mean by that is we're not getting the temperature in the thermostat, or the temperature of the engine, the water is not getting up to that level where it'll actually open the thermostat and allow the water to circulate through the engine, which is a bit annoying, frankly, because I do want the water to circulate so I can make sure that there are no leaks, but at the moment that's not happening. I'm kind of hoping today and during this video I will actually start the engine, we'll run it for a bit, and I'm kind of hoping I can get it up to temperature today, but I just don't know whether that's actually going to happen. We'll certainly give it a go. Now look, I think, and then one other thing I suppose on here, just to note again, in order to prevent everything leaking, all the water leaking out, I did have to connect the old thermostat, so that's running back to the temperature gauge, which at the moment is just resting or hanging on the steering wheel. You can see here. Now what we do find when we started and when I was running it the other day is that the temperature will come up into the green, but it pretty much stay there. It doesn't go any higher, and unfortunately that seemingly is not enough to get the thermostat to open. And right, now the other thing that I obviously am looking for is oil leaks. Now we do have some. The first one that we had was actually on the oil filter itself, so it was actually leaking all the way around this canister, and obviously dripping down into, you can see there's an oil bucket down the bottom there. I just tightened that up, alright, so I just tightened this bolt at the top, this one here, and basically that stopped it. But what I also noticed at that time is that the oil pressure on the oil pressure gauge, let's go around that side and I'll show you what I was talking about. Forgive me. So here's the oil pressure gauge. Now what I was finding was that our oil pressure was actually right up here in the, approaching the high level. So what I did is I actually have tuned it back, so I've lowered the oil pressure so that the needle sits roughly in the middle of this green, in this green section. That's where I've decided to leave it. Now that has also helped, obviously with a lower oil pressure, presumably obviously you're going to have less opportunity or less stress on any of the joints or the gaskets, etc., etc. How did I do that? Well, if you go back and look at the video that I did when we were cleaning up this oil filter housing down here, then I did explain it, but just very quickly to explain it again. This bolt or this screw here is your adjustment. So you've got a large nut at the bottom that holds this whole assembly in the filter housing. On top of that you've got a lock nut, and then you can see you've got a screw there. Now, so essentially what you do is you open or loosen the lock nut, and as you screw this screw out, that will lower your oil pressure. Obviously if your oil pressure is too low, you can then of course screw this in. Now there's only a certain amount of adjustment available. If you've got low oil pressure because your engine is worn out, this can help slightly, but it's not going to fix your problem obviously, but it can help increase the oil pressure and get a little bit more oil up to the top of the engine. But because we dismantled this, and obviously the whole engine is new, or all the components are new, the oil pressure did need to be adjusted, and that has now been done. So that's that. Then one of the next oil leak I noticed was at the back of the head here. Sorry, there's a little bit of it is a bit messy at the moment, obviously, with all the wires and stuff. But there's this blanking screw here, which look, it's got a copper washer on it, and I have tried to tighten it, obviously to prevent it from leaking. But essentially, the oil is seeping out of there. It's quite a lot. You can see how it pooled at the bottom here. You can see how it even pooled down there until I wiped it, cleaned it up. So my plan with this is two things. I'm going to remove that, and we'll probably do that in this video. I'm going to heat the copper washer and essentially anneal it, and then put it back, and hopefully that will allow the copper washer to form more easily. But what that does is it basically softens the copper, and it should allow the washer to form better to the shape of the block, and also the head, and also the bolt, and hopefully create a better seal. But just to be sure, what I'm also going to do, I am going to put some Loctite on the threads of that bolt, which hopefully will help a little bit as well. Right, now the other thing now this is a bit strange. When we first filled the engine with water, we almost immediately started getting a leak here from underneath this blanking plate. We talked a lot about this blanking plate when we were rebuilding the head. And if you may or may not remember, we used a sealant on that. And so I was actually quite surprised and frankly a bit disappointed that was leaking. And it wasn't just leaking at the bottom, it was kind of seeping all the way around. But I decided to push on, and essentially what I did, we then started the motor, we got it running, we got it up to temperature, and this stopped leaking, and it hasn't leaked since. So I believe what's happened there is that we used a sealant, but of course the engine was never subjected to any kind of heat. As soon as we heated it, hopefully what that's done now is it's actually set that sealant, and that has now sealed. We're going to keep an eye on that and just make sure that doesn't start leaking again. But having started and run the engine for basically a couple of times now, I'm confident that is no longer leaking. That may change, but at the moment it's not leaking, so we'll go with that. Right, and then we've got one more oil leak, which I noticed actually only today as I came back into the workshop. If you notice down here, I did put some paper down here, and you can see we've got two spots of what turns out to be oil, and it is leaking from this plate here. You can see it's sort of sitting there, just in that groove there. And so what I plan to do is basically just nip these bolts up, these nuts, and I'm hoping that's going to sort that out. If not, unfortunately, what that then means is we'll have to drain all the oil out. We'll have to remove this, either replace the gasket and or put some sealant on it. But I'm hoping just by tightening those up that will sort that one out. Interestingly, I don't recall that leaking when the engine was running, but certainly since it's been stood after it's run and the engine's been standing, we have had a couple of drops there on the paper. So that's hopefully we can get that one sorted. So look, I think that kind of brings you up to date in terms of where we are. As obviously we just popped the exhaust on just to make it not quite as noisy. So yeah, look, I think what we'll do now, we'll go over to the workbench. I just want to show you some of the tools I used for, in particular, making those battery cables. Talk you through that briefly. And then I think what we'll do is we'll get the battery connected, we'll get some petrol in it, and start it up, and you can see how it's running now. Okay. So just back at the workbench here, this is the cable that I used. I just wanted to show you. This is a 7mm, I think it is. Oh, it's not focusing. Come on. Come on, camera. You can do it. Hopefully, no. doesn't want to focus. Well, anyway, I'll try to get it to focus in a second. But basically, if I think if I stand this up, let's try and do it this way. Well, look, it's a flexible stranded core. It's 7 millimeters squared, I think it is, and it's a silicon insulation, so silicon-based insulation. Now, what I did, I bought 1 meter of black and 1 meter of red. What I can tell you is I used every single last bit of the red for those 2 cables, right? So the 1 cable runs from the battery down to the switch, and from the switch to the starter motor. If you're doing this, it's exactly 1 meter, literally to the millimeter. On the negative, however, you can see obviously I've cut a piece off, so this is what's left of a 1 meter length. I did purchase a set, so you get this set of this cutter. This was off Amazon, I think it was. You get it, the cutters, so you can see they're professional. But anyway, they're cable cutter, it's called. 10-inch 250 millimeter. There we go. They work really well, by the way. I was actually very impressed with how they work. But also this crimping tool, and that came with, I think that came with some lugs as well, but now I can't think where they are. Anyway, look, I also purchased some lugs. I wanted to be very specific about the size of these holes, the lug holes. Don't think that's focusing again. It's a problem when you go handheld. Anyway, I bought a couple of different options. You can see here, and they basically I measured on the old cables and I tried to match those as best I could. So I got 3 sizes. Let me show you. Let me arrange them here. There you go. I got 3 sizes. I can't remember what they are now. I think there was 10, 8, and 6 millimeter holes. And obviously at the back is the 7 to match the cable. I also found these, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a spade connector with a hole at the back. You may have noticed I used those on the coil. That was actually quite handy. Unfortunately, you have to buy them in a pack of, I don't know, I think there's 50 or something, and I actually only needed 2. But there you go. They were about £3 or something, so not hugely expensive. Anyway, so that's pretty much what I use. You'll notice I did use heat shrink as well. I'm sure you all know how to use heat shrink, but essentially that's what I did in terms of making those cables. Oh, sorry, one other thing. I did also, I did solder the ends. So before putting them into, the cable into the lugs, I actually stripped back the insulation, heated it up with I've got a large soldering iron, and then tinned it all the way through so that the whole cable was soaked through with solder. What that does, when you put it in the lugs and you crimp it, obviously then it forms better, and also it means that the copper is not exposed to the air essentially, and so it will hopefully not corrode, or you won't get any bad joints, hopefully. But yeah, very happy with this set. If I find the link on Amazon, I'll put it in the description. But it came as a set, these 2, and they actually work really, really well. I was very impressed with how they worked. It's not the kind of tool that I use every day, so I didn't want to go out and buy anything, any major brands or anything. I just wanted to get something that would actually just work on this occasion, and they actually did do a great job, so very happy with those. Alright. Okay, so as I said, one of the things I want to do is obviously to remove that bolt from the back of the head. and just anneal these copper washers. Now I have removed the bolt. Here it is. It's not a very big one. Don't know if that's going to focus. Give it a second. There we go. Not a very big one. The copper washer that was on there, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but it's actually, I think it's not thick enough. It actually, where you see where the threads end on this bolt, they end above the level of the copper washer. So that could be what's causing our problem. So I'm going to put 2 on. And I don't know necessarily if that's the right thing to do. Generally speaking, it's not advised, I believe. But I think in this case, oh, focus is gone again. Yeah, I think in this case I don't really have much choice. I feel that what's happening is that the bolt is tightening up, the threads are tightening up, and the washer itself is not actually getting to do much sealing. But regardless, we're going to anneal them anyway. So I'll quickly step through that process. I'm going to do them one at a time. Now the process is to heat them with a torch until they're cherry red, or basically as high as you can get them, pretty much, without them melting, of course. And then to dunk them in cold water. So I'm going to have a bowl of cold water. I'm going to have them on a piece of wire. I'm going to hold them in the flame, and when they're nice and hot, just dump them into the water, and that should make them nice and soft. And what it does is it essentially releases any of the stresses that are in the metal, and allows it to soften. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to step through that. I probably won't be able to talk too much because the flame the burner does make quite a bit of noise. We'll see how we go, but it's not a very difficult process, and I think probably you don't have to necessarily see it, but I thought it might be interesting to some of you. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a bowl of water here, and I have a piece of wire, thin wire, and I just put a hook on it, and I've got the washer. I don't know if you can see this, I hope you can. Just got the washer resting on the hook. We'll get this burning. See how the washer has gone cherry red? That's pretty much all you need. And then just dunk it in the water, and it's now a nice coppery colour. Do the other one quickly. Nice and red. It's actually amazing how much oxide comes off of the surface when you dunk it in the water. But right, so look, that's it basically. We'll just dry those now, and yeah, they have changed colour. So they've got a lighter sort of coppery colour. I'll bring it up to the camera so hopefully you can see them. Where are we? Let me change sides because then I can hopefully get it to focus. There you go. So you see how they've sort of changed colour. It's a little bit of tarnishing on them as well. And as I say, when you dunk them in the water, you can see them, a whole bunch of oxide coming off the surface. But I believe that those should now hopefully seal better. And so yeah, I'm going to get them back on. Like I said, I'm going to put some thread lock on the threads as well, which should help a little bit as well. But yeah, let's go over to the tractor and we'll get this reinstalled. Okay, I'm afraid I will probably land up working in front of the camera a little bit here. I can't really get a better angle. Hopefully you can see where you are now. So obviously this is the back of the head, and this is where the bolt goes here. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit more, and hopefully that will help. That's probably enough there. Right, so first thing we're going to do is get some thread lock on the bolt. But actually we'll put the washers on first. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I can't see how the focus is doing there. This is just ordinary Loctite. This particular one is 243. It's what I've used on this tractor all the way through pretty much. And hopefully that will do a good job. Get that in there. And tighten that reasonably tight, I think. Just to get those washers nicely formed, or get them to conform essentially to the joint. Alright, look, that's that one. We'll see how that goes, of course, once we get the engine running, which we will do in a few minutes. The next job obviously is go around the other side, and we'll just nip up those nuts on the sump screen, oil pickup screen. Now, I mean, I don't know that this is very interesting for you, but again, hopefully you can see where we are there. And we'll just tighten these up a bit. Now I'm using my left hand for pulling, my left arm, which is my weak arm, and that's because I don't really want to go too crazy with these nuts. I don't want to strip this. It would be a disaster if we ended up stripping one of these studs. And I'm trying to make them all as equal as I can by just judging. I mean, I could get a torque wrench on here, I guess, but I don't think that that's really necessary. Just trying to judge it as best I can. Okay. I think that, I mean, that really should be enough. I'm going to turn this paper, I might get a new piece of paper actually and just put it there. I'll clean that up and then we'll see. Hopefully that will now seal. Right, I think we're ready to start it. Now, I'm going to try to start without the choke initially. I just want to see how it does. But if we need to, I'll put the choke on as well. So, just checking. We got the battery connected. Ignition is on. Fuel is on. I have put more fuel in the tank. It did run out last time I ran it. We've got about 3/4 of this little tank at the moment, so hopefully that'll be enough. It actually does seem to use a surprising amount of oil. I mean, petrol actually. But yeah, I think we're ready to start it. So let's see how we go. We'll give it a little bit of fuel. Interesting. So you can see, I mean, it started pretty easily. The temperature in the UK at the moment is about 10 or 11 degrees. And that started pretty easily. I think there's still a little bit of adjustment to do on the carburetor. It smells like it's running very rich to me. I might try to turn that down a bit. Although really I should wait for it to warm up. So we'll give it a few minutes to warm up, and then we'll have a play with the carburetor. Okay, I've switched the engine off where it didn't get up to temperature, unfortunately. What you can see, if you look very, very closely here, is that this backplate has started leaking again. Hopefully you can see the water dripping out there. So what we're going to need to do is take that off, try and make a better gasket for it, and hopefully get that sealed up again. But I don't see any oil leak yet from this oil pickup screen cover, so I'm hoping that that one is solved. And I also don't see any oil leaking out from this bolt that we resealed at the back there. But look, the overall the exercise and the experiment, or the job, is essentially successful in the sense that the engine runs. We've managed to deal with the 2 oil leaks, that water leak. I think that that's going to be relatively easy, hopefully, to sort that out. And we didn't get it, unfortunately, didn't get it up to temperature. Again, I think that that is a common thing with these tractors. Unfortunately, the engines just do not run very hot, and that thermostat just doesn't open. Now, I will need to decide what I want to do, whether I remove the thermostat. That is an option. What that means is that you have essentially permanent cooling. I'm not really in favor of that option, because what that essentially or potentially means is that you don't have cooling at the your engine won't heat up very quickly or very well at the start, so on initial start, and that could mean that your engine's running cooler for longer, if that makes sense. which I'm not really in favour of. And of course, here in the UK, I mean, the weather isn't awful, but it does get cold, and of course, we do want the engine to heat up as efficiently as possible. Obviously, we don't want it to overheat, and that's what the thermostat's job is to do. It's meant to be doing is basically regulating that temperature. I might try and find if I can, or investigate and see whether I can get a lower temperature thermostat that will fit. That is an option. I was advised that one that I've got in there is the correct one for this engine, but turns out that, yeah, I can't seem to get it up to temp. So we shall see. But anyway, for the most part, that's a huge huge success. And I'm going to leave it there for this part. In the next section, what we'll do is we'll quickly take a look at that. Excuse me. In the next part here, we'll just quickly take a look at that new Dynamo, or the old new stock Dynamo that I've purchased, and let's take a quick look at that, and possibly even get a bench test on that and see, and just make sure that it's still working. Okay, so as I said, this is it's essentially old new stock, I think is how you describe it, but basically, or how this was described, is that this was previously reconditioned but never used. Well, not used since then, of course. Let me just get a blade. So, yeah, it's hopefully you can see that. Thoroughbred, fully guaranteed, factory reconditioned. Hopefully that. I mean, the picture on here is for a starter. I guess it's. They probably do both, or they did both. Let's have a look what we got. Oh, there's even a guarantee. Look at that. This unit is guaranteed against all defect in workmanship and materials for a period of 12 months from the date of purchase. And then it's not dated. So, so we can put today's date on it and we'll have a 12-month guarantee. Let's see what we got. You can see the box is very, very old. But, well, you know, that doesn't look too bad. Certainly spins nicely. We can see new screws have been used, and whilst there's a bit of dust on it, looking at the brushes, they do look to be brand new, which is good. I can see the field coils down there; they're nicely coated, so that is promising. So yeah, I mean, this, for what it is, we can see there the Thoroughbred stamp on it, so it obviously was done by them. But yeah, for what it is, it certainly looks very good to me. I think, look, I don't think we're going to actually get to bench test this today. I would need to get properly set up, and unfortunately I'm running out of time today. So look, I think let's leave this video there. This unit does look very good. I'm very happy with it. As you can see, there's a little bit of corrosion on it. So what I might do is, yeah, I might try and clean that up and repaint that, because obviously that is that's the bit that's actually visible when it's on the tractor as well. So, but anyway, we'll maybe get that. We might take it apart, paint that up, and then put it back together again, and just so that it's as good as the rest of the tractor. Original Lucas, it's still got the. It does have the original part number on it, so yeah, very happy with that. Alright, look, I think, as I said, let's leave this video there. Thank you very much for watching. Again, very happy with how the engine is sounding. I actually did a little bit more fine tuning when we were off camera earlier, and extremely happy with how it's running. There is a very minor hesitation when you first accelerate, which I will want to take a look at, but you know, at the moment the priority is obviously to move forward, and as I mentioned at the start of the video, actually now we need to start stripping the tractor again, just to get off those bits that are going to, you know, that you don't want painted. Things like the carburetor, the dynamo, the starter, the distributor, the radiator, all the pipes, all the wiring, etc. Anything that doesn't need to be painted. Excuse me, and then we'll move on to. Actually, what I might do is I haven't actually tested the clutch on this. I might test that in the next video, and possibly even take it for a little drive. We'd have to have a slightly different setup for the fuel tank, but that wouldn't be too difficult to do. Yeah, I think let's make that an objective for the next video. We'll try and get it actually driving, test the brakes, test the clutch, all that good stuff. To be honest, I haven't even looked at the hydraulics yet on this. I have been focused 100% on the engine, so yeah, maybe a little bit more testing to do, a little bit more playing, and then we'll start stripping it and start preparing for paint. Alright everybody, hope you have a great week, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers for now.